Is this thing on? I won't pull a Ronald Reagan with that. Is this thing on? Not the appropriate time, nor do I have that authority. Where is everybody? They think the time changed or something. They're getting here. Give you one to start.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. I guess we'll go ahead and start. Camera's probably rolling. If it's not, it's not. Rolling, like it's mechanical or something. Morning. Welcome back to our Prophecies of Christ class. It takes almost as much as real time, I think, sometimes as we get through this. There's a lot of stuff. Anyways, we're up into the pre-gospel phase. We only got a little bit more to go. Today, I'm only talking about one part of the. I spelled it Betrayal like 100 times and caught all but the first one. I don't know why I spelled it that way. I kept catching myself spelling it Betrayal instead of Betrayal. Who knows? Like it's the song of the South or something, Brer Rabbit and Brer Bear will be here in a minute. Anyways, so there it is. Not perfect, do not claim to be. So that's what I'm going to really talk about today is the betrayal. So we're really going to look at Matthew 26, rolls in a little bit of Matthew 27. Chuck covered some of the chapter last week, and some of it leaves a little bit for him to cover next week. The prayer at Gethsemane has a lot of prophecy involved with that, and trials. The trials have a lot of prophecy, so it leaves a lot of room there still. As Chuck's defined it as pre-gospel, because Jesus is still alive. So we'll roll with this from here. If you want candy, I got candy. If you don't want candy, a lot of it comes back to me anyway. So, however, we got it. Snickers, I think that's all I got right now. There's other stuff in there, but that's what we got. So starting out in Matthew 26, 1 through 2. When Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified." So Matthew 25, it says after he finished these sayings, Matthew 25, the previous chapter, which of course he didn't speak in chapters or live in chapters, but it included the parable of the 10 virgins, it had the parable of the talents, had the final judgment, sheep on the right, goats on the left, and as you did the least of one of these, you did it to me. That's what was included in Matthew 25. And that's good teaching. We hear that stuff a lot of times. So when he finished this, he says to the disciples, "You know that after 2 days, Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified." Any guesses what day it is? We'll just start with that, just for spite. What day is it? Chuck? I would say you're probably right. Tuesday is probably the answer to that. Yeah, that's probably about right. So that's probably about right. The Passover itself, I think, starts on the Sabbath, which is Saturday, right? Friday night is when the Passover would start, so it could be Wednesday. There's a contention even if whether or not he died on a Thursday, because the whole Passover isn't always when it is. So don't ask me. So there's a lot of contention to that, but I'm probably with you. It's probably a Tuesday, way to count time and stuff. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people." So what do they need to create a chance to arrest him by stealth? If the chief priests and the elders want to arrest Jesus by stealth, we've looked at it before, that they've decided he needs to die. What are they going to need to do in order to arrest him without causing an uproar, without everybody knowing? What are they going to need to do? Chuck?
Do it when he's alone.
Do it when he's alone. That would be the time you're going to do it. Stealth, you're going to catch him leaving the group, catch him out there in the dark. That would be the kind of thing you would do stealth. Is that the case? The answer is actually no. Which, when we get to that, they don't do it by stealth. They don't do it. It'll actually be more public than that. So, but they're going to need to catch him alone. So what are you going to do? How are you going to catch a guy like Jesus alone? He travels with 12 disciples. He travels with 12 apostles. He travels with what? 70 disciples? 120 disciples? Depends on the time and place. How are you going to catch him alone? What's that? You're pretty much not. But if you hope to, how would you find out when he's alone? When you're about your best chance? Find his schedule, right? Yeah. A spy. I like the answer to a spy. Somebody who knows his schedule. That's kind of the thing. Know where he's going to be. Know, if you're there, he's going to be at point A this day. You can kind of watch him and stuff. You might catch him off alone. So that's what you're going to need. And that's the story today, is the spy. Betrayal by Judas happens in verse 14 through 16. It happens after the woman with the alabaster flask, and that arrangement of events might give more clues to Judas's motivation. I never looked at this chapter as a continuous thing, which it really is. I saw this in Kaufman's commentary, so I'm going to kind of present it that way. And we are going to get some prophecies too. Matthew 26, picking up 6 through 9. That when Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment. She poured it on his head as he reclined at the table. When the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, "Why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor." So why were the disciples upset? Why did they protest? Chuck? Judas is an embezzler, isn't it? He's a thief, and he steals from their own group there. He has that tendency. It's a tendency that what's the word I'm looking for? It entices him. Money is probably the worst thing they could have trusted that guy with, because that's his. Yeah, he was the treasurer, but it's the worst thing they could have trusted him with. But yeah, he's one of these ones here. Why waste all this money? So they're protesting. Why did she spend all this money? You've heard the story a million times. I know it's a favor from the pulpit. So that's what the protest is. All this money could have been used for the poor. And if Judas is part of that, he also says, if all that money had been given to us, I could skim a good portion of this too. So, picking up verse 10, but Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble this woman? For she has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." So how does Jesus turn the tables on the disciples? They're fussing about her using this expensive ointment, this expensive nard. How does he turn the tables on them?
Well, she recognized who he was and that he was worth more than the lotion.
Right, they're not seeing the value in this. So he turns it to them that, you don't see the value that she sees. And some of the stories have her as, not, some of the versions show who she was. And this doesn't account for that. But she sees more than, she knows, she prepares him for his burial, which we know is just a few days away. Chuck?
Situation where they may have been more understanding of it when Jesus first gathered them together as disciples. But they've been with him for 3 years. And so the familiarity, I think, has kind of got them to a point where they say, we really don't view him with the same awe that we did, but the woman did.
That's a good point. I like that. They probably, like you say, in 3 years' time they've been with him, they saw him with more awe at the beginning than they started getting almost used to some of that, and they expected. I think sometimes even just Christianity in general is that way. When you look at the healing ministries, as Jesus would walk by, people would drag their family and their friends for miles just to be in his shadow with the hopes of being healed. And today, we've had the gospel for 2,000 years, and we might not be healed from sickness, but we can be healed from sin. But how many people are willing to drag their relatives and friends to heal that? And sometimes it's just almost commonplace. So
when something's brand new, of course it's cool, and then eventually novelty wears off.
yeah, it could be what it is. So he turns it on that.
That's
That's what he really does. And it says basically they can't see the value or aren't seeing the value. In 14 through 16, then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. From that moment, he sought an opportunity to betray him. So based on the placement of where this passage falls in this whole story, his defection after the encounter with the woman with the alabaster jar, what pettiness may have been his motivation? At the beginning of the chapter, you have the chief priests and scribes looking to kill Jesus. They're looking for an end. They're looking for a way to catch him by himself. He doesn't come to them at that time. He comes to them after the lady with the alabaster jar. After that encounter, that's when he seems to come to her. He goes back to the priests and chief scribes. So what do you think, what kind of pettiness might have motivated him? Is it just greed? Oh, Paul?
It could have just been the incident that happened. His total greed.
It could be.
Be trying to make him look bad in order to make himself look good.
It could be a little bit of that too. You get it's a greed factor, like you say. It could be. I like the part where you say maybe make Jesus look bad so Judas looks good. Yeah, because Jesus just rebuked him, right in front of everybody, or not just him, but the other ones. What? Don't you see this, Chuck?
Judas just lost in his mind an opportunity for putting a fair amount of money in his pocket. So he's looking for another revenue stream because Christ denied him that one.
Yeah.
Killing two birds with one stone. I get back at him, and I get money put in my pocket. I just kind of wonder whether or not the chief priests, whether when they said, "We're going to give you 30 pieces of silver," whether in the back of their mind they knew what they were doing.
That's a good question, isn't it? Yeah, when they offered him 30 pieces of silver, did they know what they were doing? Did they know that they were fulfilling prophecy, which we'll see in a little while?
Asked it this way: would you trust him, or would you want to get paid up front?
He got paid up front. Yeah, for him's end, he ought to get paid up front. Would they trust?
Saying is that I don't trust the Pharisees.
Yeah.
If they were going to pay me, I want the money up front.
Yes, he got paid. Judas got paid up front. But there's a lot, how do you trust who, which thief, which one do you trust the most? Who trusts who and who doesn't trust who? Go ahead.
Can I say this? We don't really know what the relationship with Judas and Christ was. I mean, we know he was one of the 12,
Yeah.
but what was the relationship that moved him to do that? Could it have been that he felt like he wasn't getting enough attention from Christ? Or he favored the others more, and that brought about jealousy and anger to get back at him?
That's good. It is a good question. And we're going to get to the prophecy. It's prophesied that it'll be a friend. And so Judas was considered a friend. And when you look at some of the situations, he's a friend up until the end, up until Satan goes into him. He's not.
Jesus knew that would happen, so.
Right. He knew. So this is what it's described, and it's what that motivation is. It could be a little. That's a good question. I don't know.
Was it an accountant?
What's it got wrong?
You can hit him for that.
I know, I will later.
Yeah, that would be way too close to her for that. Susan?
Well, he was really a friend to the end in that the guilt he felt caused him to kill himself.
Right.
He was repentant about what he did. I mean, we knew this was predicted, it was going to happen. Jesus knew because he said, he who dips with me is going to betray me. But if you see Jesus' nature is, he doesn't tend to treat people differently. You know, the woman at the well, Nicodemus, different people that come to him. I think it made Jesus extremely sad because he wanted, just like everybody else, wants people to be saved. But I think Judas was repentant after, I don't think he realized what they were going to do.
That's a good point. Did he really realize what was really going to happen? He apparently knew they were looking for a chance to arrest him. Satan's got a role in this too. And you're right. Judas is there for the Passover feast. He's there for the Lord's Supper. He gets his feet washed by Jesus himself. You know.
This is supposed to be fulfilled. You know, in prophecies, you know this is going to happen.
Right. So he's treated that way all the way through. We'll keep going. But anyways, it can be pretty petty. It's of what happened here. Was he just upset? It could be just, and that's Satan's things too. When you step back out and you look at it, why did this really happen? That's pretty petty. I can't believe all this happened because of this. Picking up 14, I guess we're already at 14. What did left out words apparently? What did Judas make? What did he get paid for the betrayal? 30 pieces of silver, right? Yeah. 12 was, yeah. He got 30 pieces of silver is what he got paid. I'm working with two monitors, and sometimes you're over here with one, you're over here with another, and the mouse doesn't go where you think it is, where your letters don't go. So anyways, he gets paid 30 pieces of silver. Now, Luke 22, 3 through 6 is a parallel story, parallel version. Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was the number of the 12. He went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. They were glad, agreed to give him money. So he consented and sought an opportunity to betray him to them in the absence of a crowd. So, how was the price set? Let me ask you that.
Satan entered him. That's a key point too.
This is a key point. It takes Judas himself out of it, the guy who's been with Jesus for 3 years. Satan's part of this, and we know his plan, thinking basically that you can get Jesus out of the way, fails.
A lot of people intend good, but then they listen to the wrong voice.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people's intentions, they don't get the whole picture, they listen to the wrong voice. So how did they set the price?
He conferred with them.
Conferred with them.
And the fact that they were glad makes it sound like they were getting a deal, and they kind of took advantage of them. Because when the Pharisee's glad, he's up to something.
I think you hit on the right word. Here, and they think they're probably getting a deal. They conferred with them. They've bargained in some form or fashion. It's not like Jesus came with a price tag. Chuck?
Well, it might have been against reasonable approach by the chief priests and the officers to say, we're going to get one of the 12. But they got one of the 12 to be the inside man.
Yeah, I wouldn't have looked there either.
That's probably beyond their expectations.
Yeah, I would think that would be beyond their expectations. They might find a Roman centurion that kind of watches over, kind of follows them around. They might find a pickpocket, and they might find maybe one of the disciples, one of the 120 or whatever that's kind of close. But one of the 12?
They were glad, because to me that's a corn dog eating smile.
Yeah, that would be a corn dog eating smile right there. Yeah, that would be, I classify that. So they've dealt with it. They've arrived at a price. There was no set price. We are willing to pay, and there's not a sign hanging on a tree over here, a fig tree that says, $500 for the dead or alive. It doesn't say that. He goes to them. They've arrived at some kind of price. The Pharisees are happy, and they, like I say, they think they got a good deal on this here. Luke 15, another parallel encounter. This is not a parallel encounter. This is the Prodigal Son. Sorry. Story of the prodigal son, if you compare Judas, I'm stumbling over words today. If you compare Judas to the prodigal son, what might have factored into setting the price? Remember from the parable of the prodigal son says, well, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to the father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided the property between them. So we know the story of the prodigal son. One son wants his share, which is how much? If he got 2 sons, what was his share? He gets like 1/3, doesn't he? I think he gets 1/3. I think the older son gets an extra portion, so he gets 1/3. He says, give me what's due. So if you kind of relate it back to that, Judas is kind of doing the same thing. As Judas sets his price, you can see the same word, give me. You back up back here, he says, it's in Matthew, isn't it? All right, sorry.
You know, you could say the younger son saying, I don't care if my dad dies, just give me the money.
And you almost see a similar attitude here too, don't you? I mean, with Judas, yeah, same kind of attitude. I don't care if you're dead or not. Give me what's due. Like you say back here in Matthew 26:14-15, what will you give me? What will you give me if I deliver him over to? It's the same words that happens in the prodigal son. Give me what's due. Zechariah 11, there's 2 big prophecies we'll deal with, and we'll kind of interweave them. But Zechariah 11, verse 7, is part of this. Chuck started this prophecy last week with the Lord's Supper, right? And it starts with so I became the shepherd of the flock, doomed to be slaughtered by the sheep traders. And I took 2 staffs, one I named Favor, the other I named Union, and I tended the sheep. Shepherd prophesies Jesus. So we're going to skip ahead a couple verses. Actually in 8 through 10. In 1 month I destroyed the 3 shepherds, but I became impatient with them. They also detested me, so I said, I will not be your shepherd. What is to die, let it die. What is to be destroyed, let it be destroyed. Let those who are left devour the flesh of one another. I took my staff, Favor, and I broke it, annulling the covenant that I had made with all the peoples. 11 through 12 is where we're going to pick up. So it was annulled on that day, and the sheep traders who were watching me knew that it was the word of the Lord. And I said to them, if it seems good to you, give me my wages, but if not, keep them. And they weighed out as my wages 30 pieces of silver. So in this prophecy from Zechariah, what was the life of Christ going to be worth? 30 pieces of silver. Did you know that was prophesied? I mean, we see them bargain. We see some. It was prophesied. So I know. Not a big secret, right? But it is. It's there it is. So it's prophesied. You already knew. It wasn't somebody had an opportunity. Prophesied to the point that it was very specific. It's 30 pieces of silver. It's not that he would be sold for some kind of money. It's not that he would be sold by his friends. 30 pieces of silver. So how, according to the prophecy, how were these 30 pieces of silver to be paid? How are they going to dole that out? Did they write him a credit slip? Put it on his account? Bitcoin?
You mean
Paid him ahead.
They paid him ahead. Yeah, you're right. It's paid ahead. It says it's weighed out. That's a different kind of word too, isn't it? It says it's weighed out. When you go to lunch today, don't forget to weigh out your dollar bills for whatever reason, right? Make sure they're real. It says it's weighed out. I got that right here. If you look at Matthew 26 in the New American Standard, so they weighed out 30 pieces of silver to him. The NIV says they counted out 30 pieces. In the ESV, which I've been using, it just says they paid him. Does it make a difference? It does if you tie it back to the prophecy. So they weighed out and they counted them out. You've had people do that with your dollar bills. 1, 2, 3. And it's kind of like what they did with these 30 pieces of silver. And they didn't say in them a bag, there you go, whatever's in the bag is yours. They counted them out. They may have weighed them out. The Greek word here is histemi. It seems to mean a price that is bid and set firm. Before proper coinage, the metals will be weighed for a proper value. It's part of this too. So it'd be like I go in an auction and the price is set, and that's what you owed. But before there was coins, or proper coins, They would weigh the stuff out. They have a scale there, and you'd weigh out the piece of silver, and this is how much it is. I'm sure that kind of thing kind of keeps going into language even once they got coins. They didn't just plop down a bunch of coins. They weighed them out. That one's a little small. Let's hold that one back, because it's the value of the silver more so than the coin. So the language might have been the same, kind of like dialing your telephone. You don't dial a telephone anymore, But do we still say that? Some of, those of us who dialed a telephone would still say that. How was the price set? It's bargained. I said, if it seems good to you, give me my wages. The same thing that the prodigal son said. The same thing that Judas says. If not, keep them. And they weighed them out. It seems to still be a bargain there. Because it's not set. It doesn't say, this is what I'm owed. It seems to be a bargain. Going back to Matthew 26, verse 17. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover? He said, go into the city to a certain man and say to him, the teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. So, like I said, just back to the storyline. They're looking for a place to have the Passover. In verse 20, when it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12, and as they were eating, he said, truly I say to you, one of you will betray me. You've watched, right? You've watched enough movies, or watched enough TV. You hear this in the soundtrack, right? Hey, let's all go have dinner. Let's go have the Passover feast. This is what we do every year. We're Jews. We get together, find a special place. Yeah. So this is right here. He says, can you imagine it? You're sitting everybody down. Hey, one of you are going to betray me. Like I say, you can hear the record needle scratch across the record. That's probably the worst impression you ever hear of that. But anyways, you got the idea, right? The music changes. Everything stops. He says, if one of you will betray. If I stood in front of this class right now, I said, one of you will betray me. Somebody steal all my candy. It's happened before, but anyways. You don't expect me to say that, do you? I've gathered you all here to say, one of you is going to betray me.
He didn't even mention his name, because if he mentioned his names, the other guys might have took offense to it.
Yeah, you're right. He doesn't say.
So that's actually a merciful way to bring it about.
It is. It's very merciful. Maybe that gives him still an out.
And it is allowing him to still make a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this many years later, we know who it is. 2,000 years, we still know the name. Nobody here named their kids Judas. Have you ever met anybody named Judas? My mom's name is Judith or Judy, but I don't think I've ever met a Judas. I think that's one of those names that just cross that off the list. There's probably are, because I know each year you see the least given names in America, and Lucifer always shows up on there somehow. Chuck? Jezebel, yeah. Jezebel, Judas. We don't properly name kids that. Just it would set them in the wrong direction. Why would Jesus bring this up? I got you all together. Let's just bring this up. Just drop this right here. We'll talk about it. Why would he even bring this up?
Do what I said earlier, plus I think it was foretold to happen.
Foretold? So everything goes back to Scripture.
This has got to come about.
This is happening.
This is proof of the truth.
Chuck?
This has got to be weighing on heavily on Jesus' mind. And he does later, after he dips in the cup, he says, go do what you're going to go do.
Yeah.
He wants to get it over.
He tells you to be right.
This needs to get going. It's weighing on my mind. He's going to ask his Father to say, let this cup pass from me. He knows everyone else is saying, wow, it's been a great week. We had palms and we had cloaks and we came in, everybody cheered. It's been a great week. And Christ says, you don't understand how the end of this week is going to come.
Yeah, you don't
and it's
understand.
going to be bad. Yeah.
That week, like I said, coming into town with the triumphal entry, where it ends up is quite an amazing switch.
He is his mind is in a totally different spot than the rest of the disciples right now.
Yeah, he knows. He knows. Psalm 41:9 is the other prophecy we're going to deal with. Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. And that's who we're looking at. He says it right in front of his close friend. Psalm 55:12-14 has got even more. For it is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It's not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. It is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to take sweet counsel together. Within God's house, we walked in the throng. Those are some tough words right there. You know, the one who's going to betray me, if it's somebody that I didn't like, somebody I knew as an enemy, I could deal with that. I could hide from that. But this is a friend. This is someone we've spent time with. We've eaten with. You know, we've eaten together. We've shared God's counsel together. We've been through this. Verse 20, back in Matthew 26. When it was evening, he reclined at the table with the 12. As they were eating, he said, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. When you count Judas, would you count Judas as a friend? No. Wouldn't count him as a friend? Because you know the story. Satan entered him.
Stuff in advance.
Jesus called him a friend.
He calls him a friend. I'm going to get that verse too. Just a side note here. This version says, truly I say to you. Some versions say like, verily, verily. If you look at the Greek, it's amen, amen. If you ever, I always wondered, but I ran into that one day that starts out with amen. So let it be, I say to you. And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him one after another, is it I, Lord? Is it me? He answered, he who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me, and the Son of Man goes as it is written of him. But woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born. I put 11. Do you think 11 of them said, is it me? Or do you think 12 of them said, is it me? He's already gone. Judas has already gone to the scribes. He's already gone to the Pharisees, right? Does he say it?
So I know the scripture says he was his friend, and Jesus knew that he was his friend. But you know how sometimes even a friend will do things to you that hurt you? And he lets us know, even if you were this friend to me, you had lunch with me, you had dinner with me, we have talked about the Lord together, but you still hurt me.
Still my friend. And we've done stuff that like, did I really do that? And
it hurts when people do that to you.
And he could be in a similar time frame, even knowing that he's got the 30 pieces of silver in his pocket, knowing he's talked to the Pharisees. Back into John, in a parallel account, John 13, after saying these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirit and testified, truly, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he spoke. And continuing with that, one of his disciples whom Jesus loved was reclining at a table at Jesus' side. So Simon Peter mentioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So that disciple, leaning back against Jesus, said to him, Lord, who is it? And we know typically the one whom he loved is John. And especially in his gospel, John never calls himself John. John's the one that says, who is it? Jesus answered, it is he to whom I will give this morsel of bread when I have dipped it. So when he had dipped the morsel, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. He doesn't say his name, but he says he's dipping his bread in, well, I don't know, olive oil and spices, right? Like it's like Carrabba's or something. He's dipping that in there, and it's like, whoever I dip this in and hand it to, that's the guy. You know, you can almost see he's sitting there like, oh, you know, how hard do you swallow that piece of bread with everybody knowing you're the one? Right? You stick it in your mouth a long time before you swallow it. Even along with like the scratch on the record, dum, dum, dum. This is what you hear right there, right? We all know who it is now. We saw it. It's not like, you know, if he's saying, whoever I dip this bread with and give it to, They're all looking. Where is it going to go? It's not like it's dice. He gives it to Judas. Then after he had taken the morsel, Satan entered him. Jesus said to him, what you are going to do quickly. We've heard that already. So Jesus says to Judas, Satan moves into Judas at the time. Jesus says, whatever you're going to do it quick. Get this over with. How does this help the prophecy that Judas was his friend? Okay.
But he does it because of the right reasons. We could debate, go into that, but that's another. So the point is, he didn't want to really destroy Judas, but Judas had to have a free will.
He had to have the free will to do it. Yeah.
I think it's very specific here in that, remember, Jesus could see Satan. The other people sitting around the table could not.
Right.
He knew at that point Satan had entered him. He would have loved to have reached him, even though he knew what the prophecy was.
Yeah.
But it specifically, I think that phrase is in there for a reason. Jesus entered into him.
Yeah, Satan enters into him. Like I said, Jesus sees it. Jesus basically begs for mercy here. He doesn't say don't do it, but don't drag it out. Get it done. Back to Matthew 26, the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better off for that man if he had not been born. Judas, who would betray him, answered, is it me? Is it I, Rabbi? He said to him, you have said so. He said these parallel accounts, but you see little pieces. Continuing that chapter, next few verses, 26 through 29, the institution of the Lord's Supper. Chuck covered that last week. Verses 30 through 35 in Matthew 26, Jesus foretells Peter's denial. Then there's Jesus prays in the Garden of Gethsemane, 36 through 46. A lot of prophecies there too. I didn't get to those today. Beginning of 47, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd of swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. At the beginning of the chapter, and they said they were looking to kill him, and they were looking to arrest him by stealth, kill him. Now there's a big crowd. The whole crowd comes up to him with clubs, swords. What seems to have changed, and why did it change? Now you got witnesses. Because you got witnesses, you got eyewitness accounts. Because of that, we've got, it's recorded forever. But it was a big crowd. But something's changed.
Gangs are always tougher.
Yeah, gangs gotta be tough. Who can take out first? It's not a ninja movie. 48 through 49. Now the betrayer had given him a sign, saying, the one I will kiss is the man. Seize him. He came up to Jesus and said, greetings, Rabbi. And he kissed him. Friend or enemy? It's a big question, isn't it? He lets him get close enough. Jesus knows, and he lets him get close enough, and he kisses him. Is it like the mafia kiss of death? Or is it? It's kind of hard to tell, even. The Greek word seems to imply that he did it with an affection of earnestness, with much warmth of manner. Perhaps he thought in his madness and folly that he might be able to conceal his sin, thus deceiving Christ and his fellow apostles, and thinking that he was coming simply to rejoin them, that he had no connection with the arresting band that had followed. That's from a guy named B.C. Caffin. I got that through Kaufman's commentary. So apparently it says, it looked like, according to the use of the word, it was earnest. It wasn't a show. It was still a friend. 26:50, Jesus said to him, friend, do what you come to do. They came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. Behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand, drew his sword, struck the servant with the high priest, cut off his ear. Jesus said to him, put your sword back in place. For all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and at will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so? The key, and the only reason I put this part in there, This is all so the scriptures will be fulfilled. It was prophesied, and it's fulfilled. It wasn't just a wild guess. It wasn't just, so it is fulfilled. Those words were there. They're there for us to look at it. It also looks at the people who had Jesus killed. And they were experts. They knew these signs. Like Chuck said, 30 pieces of silver, it wasn't a random number. I think I left that out earlier. Anyways, 30, there's 12 disciples. You take, it's almost a month's pay, basically, is what it is. It's almost like his share was 1/12. But the 30 was already prophesied. All this stuff it's fulfilling what was already written. So those would know. We know, they knew. That hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out against us as a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching. You didn't seize me. But all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." And all the disciples left him and fled. Jesus, there's a trial that happens. Actually, it's 3. I know we're going to pick up on that with more prophecies. Peter denies Jesus to the end of the chapter. Rolling into 27, he kind of fulfills a prophecy from Ezekiel, actually. Zechariah, whatever. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus, put him to death. When they bound him, led him away, and delivered him over to Pilate the governor. And when Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind. He brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I've sinned by betraying innocent blood." They said, "What's that to us? You take care of that yourself." Like Susan said, is he repentant? He sees what he did now. Here, take your money back. And they're like, it's on you. That's part of Psalm 55. He says in Matthew 27:5, he threw down a piece of silver in the temple and he departed. He went out and he hanged himself. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is their dwelling place and in their heart. He carried that sin with him. He threw his money down, killed himself. Zechariah 11, then the Lord said to me, "Throw it to the potter." The Lord replied, "At a price at which I was priced them." So it took the 30 pieces of silver, threw them into the house of the Lord to the potter. And that moves into verse 6. But the chief priests taking the pieces of silver, and it's not lawful to put them into the treasury since it's blood money. He also couldn't put the fee of a prostitute or the wages of a dog into the house, Lord. They took counsel and bought with them the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore, that field has been called the field of blood to this day. So the money Judas gives back, throws on the floor. They couldn't take it into the treasury. They bought a piece of land for buried strangers. That's the potter's field that was forecast earlier. Anyways, that's really it. That's it. So thank you all for joining me this morning. Thanks for looking at the betrayal. That's all I got done, but thank you for that. If you want a piece of chocolate, flag me down. I didn't hand out much.